join me on another lockdown video, and like I'm sure you've seen in the title, this is going to be around pros and cons of rods that I've used or tested. So the first part of it is going to be on rods that I've owned. I don't tend to change them too much, but we have got quite a few nonetheless. If you would like one on river rods, barbel rods, pike rods, then I'll do one on that in a separate video. Just let me know in the comments below. So we'll go around 4 to 5 years ago, maybe a touch longer, and we'll start at that point. So the first good feeder, good average feeder rod that I got was a Dayawa, and it was a Dayawa D Series, and they're only about £35. And I got a 10-foot feeder, like a carp feeder, standard method feeder, and an 11-foot waggler, pellet waggler rod. And to be honest, I did really well. When I got them, I was so impressed for the price range. They actually told my friend who was getting back into fishing, and he still has this to this day, and I sold it on actually to one of my other good friends who still has the feeder rod even now. And I'll start with the pros. So the rod itself, really well balanced light rod, had a lovely through action all the way through. The blank compressed well when you were casting. The line came through the eyes really well. Obviously the slightly widened eyes for casting, for bigger lines, although they're only rated till around about the £6 to £8, well £8 sort of mark. They were a really good rod for the money, and I did have a lot of carp on them, probably up to around £12, £13, nothing much bigger than that I would have said, and they got a lot of hammer, and so from a positive side they were a really good value for around 35 quid. On a negative side, I did notice a couple of things. One was obviously the response. They were a little bit, I won't say saggy, but a little bit, they were a little, not I won't say heavy, but they were just, you know, when you can just feel that they're not a premium rod or a, you know what I mean, they've just got a little bit of sag and weight to them, but nothing that's missable, especially for a budget rod. And very occasionally the screws would work loose on the hand, on the what hold the rod, what hold the reels, sorry, but that's only every so often, because I used to keep them up and have them in my pack away case, and you know, I didn't really find that too much of a con. Maybe it was just because in transit, I don't know. Another negative is they don't come with a pre-ready-made rod bags like some of the other Dayawa ones, but to be honest, 35 quid, I didn't really expect it. But other than that, they're really good rod. And again, with a pellet waggler, exactly the same story. Great all-round rod for a budget rod. Slightly heavier when casting, a little bit of rebound bounciness when you were casting, especially if you want casting something a little bit lighter, maybe something that wasn't as heavy waggler. It was a little bit weightier, but 35 quid, can't really expect any more than that. So moving from that, I ended up getting the first of the slightly better Dayawa rods and got a Ninja. So the Ninja sort of replaced that Dayawa D, slightly more expensive, around 54 quid, but probably one of the best rods in that bracket for price and as an all-rounder. I mean, it was a fantastic rod, and they've obviously done a newer version of that, and a lot of people I know have still got them, and they used to, sometimes you used to even see them for 20-25 quid on the second-hand things, so you could really get some good deals on them. And they're just effectively improved on that Dayawa D platform. They still had those big eyelets, they still had a nice slim profile, but when it came to the cons, they were better for fastening the reel on. The the curve and the bend of the rod still, all Dayawa rods I've had have always bent from the butt, and they did have a great through action, as do the Ninjas. But when you pick it up in comparative to a yank and bank, you can feel the difference straight away, and that's just hit in the profile of the rod. You can feel the blank when you're casting it. It's a lot. It's not a lot duller, but it's a little bit duller than if you pick a yank and bank up, or even more so when you go up the range. And when you compress with the Ninjas, you do get a good spring back, but not as good as if you obviously go up the range. And overall, I was happy with that rod, and I would still happily fish with it now, to be honest. Still a great rod. And with once I got one Ninja, I ended up getting a yank and bank, and it was the first generation of the yank and bank, and I ended up with two of them, a 10 and an 11 foot one. And then later on I added a newer version to that family, along with a pellet waggler. So we'll go on the first series of yanker banks first. I were in love with them. I thought they were fantastic. The profile was great. It was slightly slimmer than the Ninja, lighter than the Ninja, stiffer, more responsive than the Ninja. Not by any means the best rods I've ever picked up, and certainly when you pick up a more premium rod, like obviously the Endzone that I've got, or you're going up into your areas, your tournaments, all that kind of stuff, you can certainly feel the difference there. But they've still got a great piece of craftsmanship, and they do feel a solid rod. And when you've got a good big fish on, and I had fish up to high doubles, that you just still you felt in control. So the positives for that, they had that nice cork handle, obviously twist grip. They had a little eyelet to hook on your rig, so then it was all in one. Again, strong and decent sized eyelets all the way through. The blanks seem to compress a lot better and just give you that lovely spring action when casting it. It felt nice in the hand, comfortable, and it got the flat bottomed part on the base of the butt, and that again feels nice to sit flat against your forearm, and just a nice rod to obviously play a fish on. The only negative I can find is the top eyelet sometimes was a bit gentle. If I did knock one once and it really easily came off, and no problems when actually fishing with any of the other tips or anything like that, and maybe I just caught it in the wrong angle. It really was annoyed. And some of them, after, because they got a heavy use, they did stay a little bit curved, purely from the amount of fish that had been caught on them. They were almost like it had stayed bent after catching quite a lot of fish. But that's not a negative to me. It didn't affect the performance or whatever at all. And much the same as the newer versions of that yank and bank, it just tidied up the graphics, a little bit better material, slightly lighter, slightly stiffer, but very, very slim kind of changes, but just looked a little bit a bit more premium, I would have said. But pretty much the same pros and cons on there. And the Waggler, a bit of the same. It felt a lot better to cast, obviously not as wobbly, and certainly not as heavy, and it felt easier to throw out things what were potentially not as heavy if you were fishing a free line bait, for example. Yeah, so a really all-round good rods, the Dayawa, and that's hence why I'm back to that. So we'll go on to the next one, and then after that I moved, as you all know, I got back into the Preston stuff, and the first one I got was a 10-foot Monster X. Now, on paper, they looked great, and I know a lot of people get on with them. I don't know, there was just something about it that I just didn't get on with. When I bought it, the tip was split slightly, and I got that changed, and I've heard a lot heard around that was a common sort of fault about the top eye, and it's getting a split in the actual insert tip. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It certainly was on mine, which didn't deter me. I just thought, you know, that's one of them things that can happen in mass production. That's not a problem. It got replaced. I just didn't feel that the action was, I mean, they looked great. The pros first, they looked great. The eyelets were again strong and big. Nice feel, nice handle. The screws were all strong. The negative I didn't like about it was the action. I don't know. It felt a bit jerky. I don't know if I'm out of turn in regards to, I know there's a lot of people that swear by them. It just didn't feel smooth. Like maybe it was just that one rod. I don't know. When you're playing the fish and it's just got that through action, and it just didn't feel right. It just felt like there was a part it curved well, but it just felt like there were a flat spot in it that were just not right. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but that's all I can explain it is. It just felt like there was a flat spot in it. Yeah, and I just didn't get on with it. And that leads me on to my next one. The Tyson, I got an 11-foot Tyson. And again, I bought that the Monster X was about 85 quid. The Yank & Banks were about 75, 80 pound as well. They were a similar price. Sorry, I meant to mention that. The Tyson I got for about 57 quid from Bobco's. That was an 11-foot feeder, and you know what, I got on with that much better. That felt lovely. The action for that felt better than the Monster X. I don't know if it will because it were a 10-foot rod. Well, I've got, you know, the rods I've got now are 10-foot rods, and you know they're great. But that seemed to feel better for me. The through action was lovely. Again, nice line lay through the eyes. Nice handle, nice grip. And the action was great. It played all the way through. Didn't feel like it got any flat spots. I mean, the only negatives are it's that mid-range. It was a little bit heavier and had a little bit of bounce, but not too much. But that's what you'd expect from that sort of range of rod. And there's not much else I can say about it really, other than that. For its price bracket, it's a decent rod, but for me, in that price bracket, Dayawa takes some beating. Yank & Banks or Endzone Z as they are now, they take some bloody beating, they do. And I know Guru have got a similar, but theirs is slightly more expensive than the Dayawas are. I put someone onto a Dayawa Endzone S, I think he got it for about 85 quid, and he was buzzing with it, absolutely buzzing with it, and that's one reason that I've gone back to where I am now, and that's the Dayawa Endzone Z. And I looked at it, and I've through my rods, I've never gone for the higher range bracket, and I know you can go up to Tawnies, which are 300, 400, 500 quid, but it's not necessary for what fishing I do. So I still class as an Endzone Z as like a premium everyday angler rod, at nearly 200 quid, and it is a beautiful piece of kit. The profile is so slim on it, so slim, so light, well balanced when you got your reel on there, as long as you match the size to what you're fishing. The lovely size, the eyelets reinforced, a lovely flat bottomed handle, and it just looks beautiful, it feels beautiful. Comes with a plethora of tips, and it's just, obviously I've got the 10 to 11 foot one where you stick a little foot extension in there, and that just allows you to obviously choose that 11 foot scenario. Now the only negatives I could really think about with the Dayawa is, dependent on if you're a bit heavy handed, they are a very slim profile rod, so if you're a bit heavy-handed and stuff like that, then you could potentially damage it. But for its price bracket, I think it competes with anything within that price bracket. And there's obviously loads of different rods, so I'm not going to say that these are the best and no one else. And the acrylites, and there's, you know, the maps as well. They're incredible rods as well, and the Matrix Horizons. But you know, that's why it's important. Just get in the shop. I know at the moment you can't do that, but pick it up. But don't be afraid to say, is it possible to put a 3,000 reel or a 4,000 reel on it to get an idea of balance and feel what that feels like? If you're going purely on what I'm saying and you buy a Daiwa Endzone Z, I assure you, you will not be disappointed. Or an S or a Z. You will not be disappointed with the rod. It is absolutely stunning. If you buy an an acrylite, you'll be absolutely over the moon with that. You know, that's what it is. So, moving on to rods that I've tested. Now, every rod that's in here, I've fished with at least 3 or 4 times, which isn't a lot in comparative to the ones that I've owned. But this is me trying to say if there's been anything or quirks or things I found out I maybe didn't like so much after fishing with them for a little bit. So, the first one is the Midi Reactor core. And this was a 10-foot Midi Reactor core, and again an expensive rod, around 180 quid, but a lovely rod to use. Super light, like the Endzone, really light, really slim profile, looks great in the silver, and every sort of feature that you'd want, but bends down, no flat spots, great spring on compression on the blank. Lovely strong eyes, a couple of 3 different tips, and that's what you expect. The negatives, like the same for the Dayawas as well, apart from the Yanken Banks, which did come with a ready-made rod case. I think personally, for sake of how much it costs, any 150 plus rod should come with a ready-made rod bag, just even if it's just a cheap one. But that one doesn't, neither did the Endzone either. It doesn't matter, but I mean, that's just one of my things. But that was a negative. I felt, again, if you were heavy-handed, you might ping a tip, or you might end up, you know, putting a bit of damage in there. It's a strong rod, and it's a brilliant rod. But again, with these slim profile rods, if you're heavy-handed with it, it's still only a tool at the end of the day, and it can be broken. So that's the only thing I would have said about that. And then we went on to testing the Midi 5G Waggle, which is more current, and that design with the liquid carbon is crazy. I mean, it was so stiff, so responsive. It was just amazing, and obviously that was a 13-foot wag, and the thing with that is it was so adaptable. You could use it on a commercial, but then it was stiff enough for line pickup to use trotting or still water fishing for silvers. That was a real positive of it for me. The design was great. Very light in the hand, again, lovely line lay from the eyes, very even, bent all the way down from the butt. The thing that I liked about it is that you were able to throw quite a light, if you got the light enough line, able to throw quite a light waggler with it, and it'd be responsive enough to not bounce around while you're trying to cast it and tangle your nest yourself up, which I thought was great. A lot of the time I use the pellet wagglers. I like to use like the Midi soft splash ones, or the Guru ones that are in sort of like a rocket shape, and they're quite soft landers. And I'm a big fan of the foam ones. So sometimes you need an extra little bit of punch to get them out there, and those compression on the Midi were great. Just seemed to whip it out really easily, with not not much resistance, which is great. There's not much I can say bad about that Midi Waggler 5G one, to be fair. They have really thought about how to put that together, and again, it just comes down to usage. If you were to use and abuse it, then it's like anything, isn't it? It's not going to last. Then that moves me on to the 11 and 12 foot leader GT rod. So this was MAP that sent us this through, which we're really pleased for, and we tested both of those at Lindholm Lakes. But I also had the 11 foot with me a few times on the rivers, and catching silvers and things like that. Now, as I said in the film, they are in the budget sort of £45 sort of pound mark, so they were a bit heavy, and they were a little bit unresponsive sometimes. Not totally unresponsive, but certainly not as responsive as the Ninja that is in that same kind of price bracket. That's a different league in comparative to that. The one of them was a distance feeder, the 12 foot, and I'd have been happy to fish that on a lake, fishing for big bream at distance, or at Boddingtons for carp. There's plenty of backbone in them. If you can cope with the fact that they're just obviously not a premium rod, they are to get the everyday angler started in either distance fishing or feeder fishing, and you can cope with that, then there's no problems there. They had a good play in action when you hooked the fish. It bent through. You can see that on the videos, and I had no problems using them. It's just like any rod that we test. We only have a certain amount of things you can test it with it, unless you're fishing with it for years and years and years. But whilst we fished with it, that's what the conclusion we came to, that for the price bracket, they were more than capable of coping with things. But when you put them next to a Dayawa Yanken Bank, there's not a comparison there, in my opinion. Just the Yanken Bank is far the more superior rod. But then again, you're able to pick those leader GTs up probably 30 or sub 30 pound second hand, which is you can't grumble at that. And then we go on to the Midi Power Phase 12 foot, and that was the last one that we've tested so far. And with that, it's something slightly new to what we do. We don't do a lot of distance fishing, and it were a big rod and a big 4,000 reel, and we're casting that with great ease at Benny's. Again, they've got big eyes on there, so you can let that line go out. Responsive. They're looking about 130 pound, responsive, and really did allow the compression for a big rod to punch that out, and that were up to 160 gram, so you could really put some weight on it and cannon it out. And we only had sort of the tip for the 80 gram tip in there. With it, the 160 gram tip, you throw a cannonball out there, obviously with bigger line lay and bigger eyelets for the bigger line. No problems. It could fit a 5,000 reel on there, no problem, to cast that out if you really wanted to. And just an all-round lovely rod to look at, and to fish with. The action, again, full bend through, no flat spots whatsoever, and just a joy to use. Again, all I can say with that is, it's just when you're buying a rod, make sure that it suits your demands, your needs. Most commercial anglers won't ever need anything over 11 foot. You just don't need it. There's not the distance, unless you're fishing a big open water where you do need to get a big feeder out some distance. You don't actually need anything above 11 foot. And a lot of snake venues, you're going to be on your 9 foots or 10 foots, even smaller sometimes with the 8 footers. And that's important that you get what you need. If you could probably use that Power Phase well, you could definitely, with the 160 gram tip on, use that on rivers. Maybe not on your Trents and stuff like that when it's in full flood and stuff, but you could certainly use it on most rivers around the country in normal conditions to catch barbel on, no problem. One of my friends actually uses just a standard commercial feeder rod and still seems to do really well. So certainly that one it'd be a good one to have on the river. I've got a 12 foot and an 11 foot Drennan rods, the 7 series ones that I use for barbel on there, and you know, I wouldn't say it's as strong as that, but it's certainly up there for what you need to use it for. So I mean, hopefully that's helped you out. I'm just send any questions you want through. Like I said, these are my opinions. I haven't used every single rod. I haven't used the matrix rods. I haven't used the Drennan rods, apart from obviously my series 7s. I've not used the map rods. I've not used the cadence rods, which are meant to be really good as well. There's tons and tons of rods out there that are fantastic rods. I'm not saying that Dayawa are the best rods going. I can't give you that opinion because I've not fished with all the other rods. What I'm saying, for me, having my experience, they have always been a good rod, whatever level I've used them at, and they have never let me down, touch wood. Never let me down, and I just have confidence, and as you know, confidence in fishing is paramount. If you've got confidence in what you're using, how you're fishing, what bait you're using, what tactics you're using, it gives you that buzz to catch more fish. And I just have that confidence when I'm playing a fish on my rods, and certainly on this new Endzone rod. If you haven't seen the 4-ways fishery catching big carp video, you need to watch it, and you'll know exactly what I mean when you watch that. I had over 240 pound on the clicker that day of just huge carp, and all on that rod with 5 pound line. So definitely worth a watch. And what I will say is every single thing, nearly everything on this list, bar the Dayawa D and the Yankum Banks, you'll able to see an unboxing and review on. If you go to the angling info videos that are in the playlist, you'll see me fishing with the Yankum Bank rods. I don't think I actually did a review on them, but I obviously fished with them pretty much through all that. So you will see that even into the early angling for you days, I had the Yankum Banks, but everything else on there has got reviews on the, if you go on the unboxing and review section of the playlist, you'll able to watch all those. So that'll give you an actual visual to back up what I'm saying, and you'll probably come to that same conclusion. So hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Try not to ramble on too much. It's quite difficult when you're trying to explain something without a visual, and you know, hopefully it landed and you understand where I'm coming from. So thank you very much for all your support. I hope everybody's doing well and everybody's being safe, and we'll keep these pros and cons going up. If you've not watched, we've had the box, we've had the side tray, we've had the poles, we've got these, and we've also got the landing net handles. If there's any others things that you'd like me to do, luggage maybe, that might be one, and we'll have a look at that one. Then yeah, just put a comment below. But as always guys, if you want to join us on the Facebook group on Angling For You, if you want to join us on the Instagram at angling_for_you, if you could like, share and subscribe, that'd be fantastic. And until the next one guys, tight lines.